Hey guys, Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you an unboxing plus on-feet video of the brand new Warrior Gambler 2 Pro in the Velocity Red colorway. Now inside the box with the top-end model, Warrior does include a boot bag. There's no strings or anything like that. You can kind of tighten it at the top, but you can't wear it as a backpack. It's just a simple boot bag, black in color, Warrior branding in silver on the front, and then your little Gambler logo there in red as well. So we'll get that out of the way. And other than that, all you're going to find inside the box are the shoes themselves. So we'll get these out of the box really quickly. And if you guys could take a second to leave a like on the video, it would be greatly appreciated. So here is a look at the new Gambler 2 Pro from Warrior. Warrior, a company that has very recently jumped into the soccer market. It's been a couple of years now, so it's not too recently, but they still are the new guy in most people's eyes at least. And they've had some winners as far as their shoes go, and they've had some questionable models as well. I think with the Gambler 2, there's definitely some positive aspects about this shoe, especially in comparison to the original Gambler, which was okay, but honestly didn't have that premium vibe, especially for the price tag Warrior was asking for it. This is pretty much a complete redesign. Everything about this shoe has been changed, and I have to say I'm actually very, very impressed with the final product, and I can't wait to try them out. So there's definitely some positive aspects here. They are making some changes, and they're making very unique shoes. In today's video, we're going to take a look at what those changes are and what exactly is so unique about the Warrior Gambler 2 Pro. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. When it comes to Warrior soccer cleats, the majority of the complaints that I've heard have not been around the performance or the fit or even the comfort of the shoe, but more so about how they look. People don't seem to like the styling of Warrior soccer cleats, and I have to agree with them with some of their models. They haven't been the best looking cleats, but with the Warrior Gambler 2, I honestly feel like this is a good looking shoe. I actually really like how these look, and I want you guys to leave your honest opinions down below in the comments. Would you wear these? Why or why not? Does the look of the shoe really matter at the end of the day when it comes to the overall performance? I think the answer to that question is no, but when it comes to visuals, again, I'm actually a big fan of the Gambler 2. I think that to date, this is Warrior's best looking shoe by far. But again, your opinions down below in the comments are greatly appreciated. Let's get a bit of a discussion going because I'd be curious to hear your opinions. Now, as far as the colorway itself goes, you can see that it's a very interesting shoe simply because there's a lot of textures, there's a lot of patterns, there's a lot of logos. There's a lot going on with this particular shoe from top to bottom. The upper is mainly in this Velocity Red color, which is red, so it's got some vibrancy to it, but for the most part it has a pretty matte finish. So as far as red shoes go, they're going to be relatively low profile. You can see that it's kind of a red fuse material, which we'll talk about more a little bit later in the video. There are some shiny aspects to the upper, but again, it doesn't really have that pop in person. It's a fairly subtle red shoe. And then you can see that there's some exposed kind of checkerboard woven material on the outside as well as the inside of the shoe, which again kind of gives it a unique look. Also on the medial side, you're going to find the ace plate, which kind of has the look of a fingerprint type of thing, which again I think looks cool. It gives it a very modern look, which I think is what Warrior was going for with this particular shoe. And as far as their branding is concerned, I've always felt that they put the Warrior logo a little bit too far forward. This time it's kind of right there in the middle. It is fairly large, and it does have that kind of 3D raised effect in this nice silver with the black outline. I really like the placement of the Warrior branding. I think it's a pretty cool logo, and this is, like I said, by far the best implementation of their logo on a pair of soccer cleats. You can see you have one more Warrior logo in a circle right there on the tongue, one on the very back of the shoe, and then your Warrior Gambler branding right here on the medial side. The heel counter and sole plate is all white plastic, as you can see, so nothing too crazy there. And then all 17 studs, which we'll talk about more later in the video, are solid red in color. So again, to me, it's a simple colorway. It looks good. There's not too much going on, but at the same time, it's one of those shoes that I think a lot of people are going to love the look of, and others are just going to absolutely hate. So depending on what your opinion is, share it down below in the comments, and we'll get a bit of a discussion going. So that's pretty much it as far as the visuals of the shoe are concerned, and we'll talk about the tech specs next. One thing that I really like about Warrior soccer cleats is that they never try to copy anybody. Every new model introduces new technologies and new ideas that we really never seen before, and to me, when it comes to new ideas, that's what the Warrior Gambler 2 is all about, which is part of the reason why I'm very excited to try them. And as far as shoes that have been released in 2014 so far, this is, in my opinion, one of the most unique releases we've seen thus far. Now, as far as the upper is concerned, it's a very interesting material. It's what they called threefold construction where they're essentially three separate layers. You're going to find a layer of foam, a layer of what they call tech mesh, and a layer of thin fused material over top. Now the memory foam pieces are going to be basically in these highlighted areas where it's essentially a thinner layer of foam, a type of memory foam if you will. They call it control foam, no surprise there. You're also going to find that in the tongue. Now memory foam is something we're seeing played with a lot on several modern soccer cleats. It was very common in the Maestri 1, the Maestri 2 from Nike. Obviously we're seeing a form or variation of memory foam in the current Evo Power 1 from Puma. And on the Gambler in this particular situation, they're saying that the memory foam is going to act as somewhat of a control element. Now in terms of the softness of that foam, it's honestly not particularly soft. You can see it doesn't even raise off of the shoe all that much. So for the most part, you have a fairly flat surface. I think in the tongue it is most noticeable. Hopefully you guys can see this here. It's definitely a little bit thicker than what you're going to find on the rest of the upper, but nonetheless it feels like it's going to provide a nice premium touch on the ball. And again, I'm just curious to see how it's going to feel. Now that is just a part, an element of the upper. The main piece of the upper, the main upper itself, is made from this tech mesh material. You can see there are exposed areas here on the lateral as well as on the medial side, and you can see that the upper itself has kind of its own little checkerboard pattern or texturing across the entire shoe. Now this tech mesh material is going to offer a couple different benefits. One, it's relatively lightweight. Two, it's very, very strong, so it's going to make for a nice durable construction. And three, it's actually going to provide a decent amount of protection. It's a similar concept to the protective mesh that we see on the NitroCharge 1.0 at this point in time. And again, I just think it's a cool element that I'm not sure how it's going to perform in terms of touch, but in terms of just durability, providing good responsiveness, good rigidity, and support in all the right areas, and of course providing really good protection while still maintaining a lightweight and relatively low profile form factor. This is definitely a very interesting concept from Warrior. Now on the top layer you can see that they've implemented a very thin layer of fused on material. This is again something we're seeing a lot from Nike at this point in time with their Nike skin on the Hypervenom Phantom, and then of course the top fused on layer on the current Magista Obra as well as the Superfly 4. So again, it's not necessarily something all new, but we do know that it can work on a pair of soccer cleats, so it's one more positive way of looking at the Warrior Gambler. For the most part, it does have a fairly matte finish. Again, these areas that you guys can see are a little bit shiny, have a slight grippy texturing to them, but for the most part, I don't expect it to have too big of an impact on the overall feel for the ball. You can see here on the instep, you have what appears to be a control element. This is what Warrior calls the ace plate, and essentially what it is these glued on little pieces of, it's rubbery, but it's more of like a harder plastic, and the grip is formed by the actual pattern itself when something kind of rubs against it. So again, I'm not sure how much grip it's going to have on the ball. I'm not sure if it's even going to be that noticeable while you're wearing the shoes, but visually it looks pretty cool. And again, I'm curious to see how it's going to perform. The lacing system, as you can see, runs very, very deep, which is pretty common for most Warrior shoes, and it runs into the instep as opposed to down the middle or towards the outside of the shoe. So again, it's something that we've seen before on the Maestri line, we still see on the Magista line, but this one obviously is a little bit more extreme because it does run deeper into the shoe. Again, I'm not sure if because it runs deeper it's going to provide any kind of it's going to make for any kind of a nuisance in terms of touching the ball if it's going to get in the way, but in terms of providing a nice tight fit as far down the foot as you possibly can, I really like the deeper lacing system that they've implemented on this shoe. You do have a fairly high cut in the heel area, so in terms of just overall support, you're going to get a nice kind of locked in feel with pretty much any of Warrior's shoes. You can see that they have incorporated their signature murder hole cutouts in the top of the tongue here as well as on the back of the Achilles area. Again, this is kind of a cool little idea. They're essentially just cutouts there to allow for better flexibility right here at the top of the tongue and the very back of the shoe. At the back here, it's kind of a similar concept to what we see on the Evo Power 1, where you have that little kind of rubberized oval. It's basically just thinned out, hollowed out material with the rubber covering up the inside, so it's more flexible. Again, it's a comfort thing. It's going to make for kind of the shoe to wrap around your foot a little bit more comfortably, I guess, without that break-in. It's going to cause less friction. And again, I think it's a cool little idea, and it definitely does look the part as well. As far as the inside liner is concerned, it is a seamless liner. This is what they call the Royal Flush liner. All of the names, if you guys have noticed, are kind of based around the Gambler name of the shoe itself. So you have your Royal Flush liner, and I've actually removed the laces so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. There's no stitching there. The insole is removed on this pair. You can see there's a little fuse line right here at the midfoot, and this liner seems to be pretty nice. It's a kind of a synthetic leather material with a very faint checkerboard pattern, has a nice kind of chrome finish to it. You've got a decent amount of padding here in the heel, so I don't expect that to be an issue. And this liner is also going to provide some really good extra stability to the upper itself, kind of going to reinforce it a little bit. And again, you're not going to have any kind of issues with friction because there isn't really anything to rub against, because it's pretty much completely smooth material. No stitching, no friction. Hopefully that should lead to better comfort. Now the insole is another one of those things that I really like about Warrior shoes. It is of course fully removable, and this is what they call the 4D foam footbed. Now this is very similar to what we see in Under Armour shoes with their 4D foam and micro G combination. So basically you have a top layer of this very soft kind of spongy material. There's no mesh lining on here whatsoever. You have a very cool kind of texturing pattern here, which doesn't make too big of a difference in terms of how it actually feels and how comfortable it is. And then that base layer in yellow is actually that 4D foam. It's very, very spongy. As far as insoles go, these are a little bit on the thicker side in terms of what you're going to find in most soccer shoes. And as far as providing great step-in comfort, this is absolutely fantastic. It is as cushioned as you're going to get from a pair of soccer shoes. I would compare it to a pair of running shoes that are a little bit more on the low profile side, in that you do get a really good amount of underfoot cushioning in this particular shoe because of this insole that you just won't normally get in most other soccer shoes unless you're buying from a brand like Under Armour. But again, definitely one of those good elements in this shoe that I'm excited to try out. Always fun to use these types of insoles just because they're extremely comfortable to wear. Now moving on to the back of the shoe, you can see that you do have what they call, I think they call it the heel saver or something like that. I don't remember the name specifically, but it's an external heel counter. Again, just provide a little bit of extra protection, a little bit of stability in the heel as well. And then moving on to the sole plate, this is what they call the Loaded Deck stud pattern and sole plate. Now, I thought that was pretty kind of a funny name, Loaded Deck, again, kind of playing into the Gambler theme. And then it's loaded because you have 17 studs in total to make up what is a firm ground stud pattern. So you can see it's pretty much all plastic construction. You have a little bit of a pattern right here just to reinforce the midfoot area of the shoe. And then as far as the stud pattern is concerned, I have used it on the original Gambler. This is really the only element that has made the transition from the original Gambler to the Gambler 2. And I have used it on that shoe. It performed really well. What's great about this stud pattern is it's extremely stable because you have so many studs under your feet. And the studs for the most part are fairly short for a firm ground stud pattern just because there are so many of them. They didn't want to make it overly aggressive. So if you're playing on hard ground, this is really ideal because one, you're going to get great traction, and two, they're going to be very comfortable because you have lots of studs under your feet. So stud pressure is not going to be an issue. As far as performance is concerned, it's a very multi-directional stud pattern. They're kind of all bladed studs, as you can see. Some are fairly short, some are a little bit longer with some curve to them. And again, you're going to get grip in all directions pretty much at all times. So as far as effective stud patterns go, this one is extremely effective. So that's pretty much it as far as the Warrior Gambler 2 Pro is concerned and all the tech specs and performance elements you need to know. There's a lot to know, and I'm curious to see how it's going to perform, but that's it for that. And with that being said, let's move on next to a quick weigh-in so you can see how lightweight these guys are. Despite how they may look, the Warrior Gambler 2 Pro is actually relatively lightweight. So I'm going to weigh this pair for you today in real time. Keep in mind this is a brand new pair in a size 8.5 US. We're going to throw it on the scale, and you can see that they weigh in at 8.8 ounces. So they're in that 8 ounce range, which like I said is relatively lightweight. It certainly isn't a heavy shoe. It's not going to weigh you down. It's tough to compare it to anything else out there on the market because it is so unique. But again, if you were interested in the Gambler 2 Pro, just know that they aren't a heavy shoe despite how they may look, and it really shouldn't be the deciding factor if you're interested in a pair of these for yourself. So that's pretty much it as far as the weigh-in portion of the video goes, and move on next to a quick on feet so you can get a better idea as to how these shoes fit and of course what the sizing is like. Alright, here's a look at the Warrior Gambler 2 Pro on feet. And again, I just want to mention that I actually really like how these shoes look, especially on feet. If anything, they look much better on feet than they do in hand, at least. In terms of how they fit really well. As far as comfort is concerned, this material is not the softest. It's actually a little bit on the harder side. But again, it's kind of hard to judge it prior to breaking it in, because it is one of those synthetic materials I think is going to require a decent amount of break-in time. I'm sure it will soften up significantly after a couple hours. But from right out of the box, they're not uncomfortable. They're just a little bit stiff, at least the upper is. In terms of the overall fit, they fit extremely well. That deep lacing system gives you a really good amount of customizability in terms of how tight you want the shoes to be, as well as the width of the shoe overall. So as far as wide-fitting shoes go, while I don't think you're going to get much stretch out of the upper, there is a ton of width in the midfoot and forefoot, while the toe box is a little bit more snug. So if you have really wide feet, this may be one of those shoes to consider, because they do seem like they're going to be suitable for pretty much all foot types, as long as you don't have really wide feet. As far as sizing is concerned, the pair that I have on right here is a size 8.5 US, and my toes are right at the end. This is a half size smaller than I would normally wear. It was actually a mistake that I ended up getting an 8.5. I do have a 9 on the way. These fit, like I said, really tight, but for the most part, I think I would recommend going true to size in the Gambler 2 Pro. I am going to try out the 8.5 for testing, as well as the 9 when they arrive, and I will reflect on what is the best size in the full written review. But as far as what I can recommend right now, unless you want your shoes to fit really tight, I would recommend going true to size for the best possible fit in the Warrior Gambler Pro 2. Alright guys, that's it for my unboxing of the Warrior Gambler 2 Pro. It's definitely an interesting shoe. It has a lot going for it, and I'm optimistic as to how it's going to perform. But until I've actually worn the shoe myself, I don't want to say anything too positive or negative about the overall performance. Now I'm going to be testing these over the next couple of weeks, and I'm very excited to do so. Hopefully I'm able to get that replacement size 9 US relatively soon, just because I think those are going to fit me a lot more comfortably, as I do feel these run true to size. And pending that I do get that size 9 in relatively soon, you guys will see my follow-up review in about a month's time. In the meantime, if you guys want to check out the review page on my website, linked it down below in the description of this video. You'll find the high-quality images of the shoe that I give you a better idea as to how they actually do look in person, as well as buy it now links if you're interested in purchasing a pair of these for yourself. In the meantime, if you guys have any questions at all regarding this shoe, be sure to leave your suggestions or questions down below in the comment section. And just like I mentioned, if you have any suggestions at all, whether it has to do with the Warrior Gambler or not, leave those down below in the comments. Always open to hearing what you guys want to see as far as content is concerned. If you enjoyed today's video, found it helpful and informative, be sure to support it with a like, subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all of my social media information down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, thanks for watching.